Morning. We go to chapter 30 in economics, redistribution of income. I'm quickly going to review, then we'll go on to today's lesson. For redistribution of income, it simply talks about how income can be shared among the society, among people within the economy. So we have redistribution of income because there's income inequality. And when we talk about income inequality, it simply means there's gap between the rich and the poor. So, and if there's gap between the rich and the poor, it means some people within the economy will have more than others. So that might bring about poverty. I think you understand why we have the distribution of income. So it is the duty of the government to ensure the gap between the rich and the poor reduces. Because if it is able to be reduced, then the living standards in the economy will increase or improve. And people will be able to at least move away from absolute poverty to relative poverty. That is what redistribution is about. So we'll go down, say. So we have income inequality, which I just explained. It simply means some people make more than others within the economy. So there are different reasons why you could earn more than your colleagues. That is income inequality. What are the reasons here? Let's see. Yeah, one, workers with natural talents, a good education, valuable work experience, or who can offer labor in the market where there is a shortage of qualified labor, we tend to earn more. So one of the reasons why we have certain individuals earning more than others is because they are talented, they have unique talents that others do not have. Like the footballers, Messi, Ronaldo, and other footballers. So you talk about these two guys first before you talk about the rest. They don't earn the same, but they are all footballers. But for the fact that they have special talents that others do not possess, that might allow them to make more than others. So there's income inequality in the football world. Do you understand? It does not only end in the football world, it's even every walk of life, every industry. So it means some individuals will earn more than others based on the fact that they have experience, they have skills that others do not possess. So that might increase their own level of income. Do you understand the first point there? The second one, people who do not work, such as nationals, receive lower incomes than those in employment. So those that are economically active, these are people that are employed. They earn more than those that are economically inactive, like students, women that are housewives. So they earn less. As a result, the income will not balance there. You get the point there? That's the second reason. The third one, people who own assets such as property, shares, and capital will enjoy additional income such as rent, dividends, and interest, respectively. So the third point is about the factor income. People that have land, they have shares from companies, they have assets. So it is expected of them to make more than those who do not have. Do you get the point here? Because there's always a reward for the factors of production. Land, there's rent income. Capital, there's interest. Labor, there's wages. So all these factors input, all these factors of production will bring about certain reward, which is important. So you that don't have a land, you won't be expected to make revenue from income from land because you don't have one. So an individual that has a land will make income than those individuals who doesn't have a land. Do you understand the point there? So these are reasons why we might have income inequality. So for every organization or for every country, there's a measure through which we know how the level of income inequality is within the economy. We use the Lorenz curve. So for the Lorenz curve, it simply talks about how income is being shared among people within the society. So based on this graph here, when we look at it, the cumulative income here is 20, and here is 50. So 20 people amongst here, 20 people makes 20, and the rest of the 30 have to share the 20 here. So there's income gap between the population. So there's income gap. This is the gap between the rich and the poor. 20 have this, and 30 have to share among this. So there's income gap between them. So this is income inequality. But we have we have equality here, where 50 shares 50. But in a real society, it is not possible. Because in every society, we have class. We have the middle class, we have the upper class, and we have the lower class. And their level of income will determine all these things. Can you just stop that already? And their level of income will also determine that. Do we understand? Any questions about that, please? So that takes us to poverty. Since there's always going to be income inequality, it means some people will have more than others. And whenever in any economy that there's a very gap, a huge gap between the rich and the poor, it will bring about poverty. So what is poverty? I wrote poverty. And unequal income distribution means some people within the economy may live in poverty because the income within that economy is not distributed equally, which simply means some will have more than others. So those that don't have might live in poverty. So what is poverty? I wrote. It simply means living in an environment where needs are not fully met. So we call it poverty because it's a situation whereby people live in a place or in an environment or in an economy that their needs are not fully met. That is what poverty is. So we have two types of poverty. We have relative poverty and absolute poverty. So why do we call it relative poverty? I wrote. This is a situation whereby people's income is not enough to meet their basic needs. The required average living standard. So let's say the average living standard in this country is, let's say, $10 per day. That's the living standard. What you need to buy is $10. But most of the people are unable to afford $10. Maybe they can have $7, $8, $6. So they are unable to meet up with that average living standard. They are not in poverty. They are not in poverty. They are not in absolute poverty. But they cannot still meet up with the average living standard. That is what we call relative poverty. Do we get relative poverty here?
Yes.
And here, we call it relative poverty because the average living standard of the people are not met. We have money, we try, but we cannot still reach the average. That is relative poverty. Therefore, absolute poverty, it is absolute poverty because people find it difficult to survive. They cannot meet the basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter. This is absolute poverty. Do we get the difference between absolute poverty and relative poverty? Yes. It is relative poverty because the income available to individuals cannot still meet the average living standard. That is relative poverty. It is absolute poverty because individuals struggle to survive because they cannot meet up with the basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter. Do we get it? So why is it important to reduce poverty? Poverty is a situation, is a very terrible situation that needs to be avoided. Do you get the point? So it has to be reduced. Though we cannot really eliminate poverty, we can only alleviate it. We can try to reduce it. So why is it important to reduce poverty? Number one, to meet basic needs. Starvation can lead to loss of life, and it's mostly as a result of the inability of people to meet their basic needs, such as food. If absolute poverty can be reduced, people will be able to meet their basic needs, and children will be able to grow more healthy. So the first reason why it is important to reduce poverty or income inequality is that it reduces absolute poverty, which means at least if income inequality is reduced, people now have money to spend. Even if they are not able to meet up with the average living standards, they will still be able to meet up with their basic needs. Do you get it? So, increasing income gap, reducing the gap between the rich and the poor, might make people to move away from absolute poverty to relative poverty. And relative poverty might even be eradicated too, because now people have access to money. So it is important to reduce poverty within the environment or the economy, because people will be able to have the basic needs that their life depends on. Do you understand the first point? The second point, raising living standards. Living standards is simply about the well-being. And for you to be able to cater for your well-being, it means you have income, yes or no? So if the gap between the rich and the poor can be reduced, it simply means now we have access to money. So we can live a life that is better than what we used to live. So our well-being can be taken care of. And that reduces poverty too. Do you understand the second point here? The second point is about our living standard. Living standard is all about how you live, your well-being, what you can afford. So if income is increasing, if the gap between the rich and the poor is reducing, it simply means the poor start having access to money. So what they cannot afford, they can now afford it. So that means their living standard will improve. Do we get the second point here, please? And the third one, ethical reasons. When we talk about ethics, ethics is all about morality. And what is moral? The principle to know what is right or wrong. So I don't have to tell you, it's just a common sense thing. Did you get the point here? So most of the people do not understand that most of people think that poverty should be eradicated. So it's a moral thing. So it means it is the duty of the government and economic actors to find a way to reduce poverty because it is important for them to do. It is not, it is how do we call it? It is their responsibility. So it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that people do not live in poverty. So that's why I said it is ethical reason. Here, ethics simply means what is right, moral, what is right or wrong. So it is the duty of the government to understand or to know that poverty is not something that should be rampant within the economy. At least to reduce it. Is it clear, please?
Yes.